Reference is up there. Those are the places that we ventured to. Sri Lanka to the far south, and then the 6 of them went on to New Delhi. But we basically worked our way up the side of India. But there's just some preliminary information for you. The way you see us dressed tonight, we are clearly fashion plates. This is, for the most part, how we dressed in India. Women were supposed to be in tunics, and we did not wear leather products to the best of our knowledge. Usually women in India had, because the point of a woman is she should be properly covered, where her body parts connect in, and then properly covered, and then the scarf disguises the front, quite frankly, so that. And if you're in prayer, and I never remembered to put my scarf on when I prayed. So, But this is what we pretty much look like. We did call them, what were curry colors? Is that what the curry? Yeah, Jim didn't kind of make curry colors tonight, but the curry colors have been. I think if you asked any of us, we would say it was a better and more gentle trip than we ever expected it would be. You already know, you prayed us across. We did not get sick. We did not get kidnapped. It was a good trip. Tonight, the goal is, we all have time limits, and the goal is we will be done within the hour. So if folks start going over, those are the people you throw the tomatoes at. And hopefully at the end, if you have questions, we are going to be here. George, if you have questions, we are answering those questions. Promise. The goal tonight is, though, we are going to begin with the highlights and the overview of India and Sri Lanka. From there, we will move to the welcome and the hospitality of the people that we met. We will talk about farming practices and the FRB projects. One of the things that we learned along the way is sustainable farming equated to sustaining families. Very important connection. Going to talk about the poverty and the people on the streets, surprises and contradictions of India, and of course we will end with our Face of God stories. So it is Jim who starts us off with highlights and overview of India and Sri Lanka.
Okay, this working? So the first thing, Sri Lanka is to the south. It's an island. It's about half the size of Oregon. The southern part of it is tropical. In fact, our guide said the rule is if you throw a seed down in Sri Lanka, it'll grow. They don't have much trouble growing in the southern part. The people there in their house would have banana plants, mango, coconut, you name it, they had it. The population is about 20 million. The main religions are, it's 70% Buddhist, 15% Hindu, 8% Christian, and 7% Muslim. It's what I call a socialist republic, kind of like Norway and the like. In theory, it's democratic, but they provide everything. All children go to school. They have a literacy rate, though, of 90%. Now, what you and I would understand, they don't read quite as high as we do, but still it's quite high. They're all the traditional, meaning they all have uniforms. Every school has a different uniform. These are the older kids. And all the older kids take care of the younger kids. You would see tututs, which are little, tiny little machines, and inside of that would be 14 kids. Their job was to get those kids to the school, which was amazing since Jill and I could hardly fit in a tutu. But anyway, they provide medicine. The Western medicine's provided, which is mainly for what I call for accidents and stuff like that. They mainly do herbs. The vacation part. The first thing we did is 2 days of safari. So I'm going to fly through this because we saw lots and lots of animals. That's supposed to be a crocodile. Water buffalo. This was early on after you've seen 1,000 or 2,000 water buffaloes and almost get run over on the freeway by them. You don't really want to see them anymore. Wild boars. Well, I can never remember. It looks like an elk to me, but yeah, it's got a name. Spotted deer, monkeys. The women like the monkeys. I ran from them. They're dangerous. But anyway, elephants. That was really cool. Elephants were 10 foot from us. That was the mother. Here's the baby, and we watched as the baby was cleaning off and everything. 8 foot from us, and then, as I say, survival of the fittest. This frog didn't make it. Anyway, weddings. We ran into lots of weddings. We actually walked in on lots of weddings and got invited to some weddings. They have a lot of tradition. This is a traditional or a high country wedding in Sri Lanka. It's the same thing in India. In India, it's 15 days of wedding, is the way I'll word it. And the date is picked by astrology. So the date, they look at the birthday of the bride, the birthday of the groom, and the astrologer says this is the best day to get married, and the time. So like 9 o'clock in the morning, they could be getting married. The interesting part, one of our guides, he said that for the first 14 days, there were about 200 that he fed nightly. And then when the wedding came, if you invite somebody, that person can invite anybody you want. So like at his wedding, there were 1,500 people. He said he didn't know over half of them. And he said he almost went bankrupt having the wedding. This is the high country bride. This is low country or traditional, which I thought was nicer. But anyway, so that was weddings that we saw. Tea plantations, because Sri Lanka was Ceylon, it's known for its tea. I was amazed. This is the northern part, which is drier. It only gets its water mainly during the monsoon season or summer. But mountains and mountains of tea, which I just never understood until I got there what tea plantations were. As we were looking out, she's showing us a tea plant. All tea comes from the same plant. Black tea, green tea, and white tea, which is what they have in China. All the same. It's just how they process it. As you went back, basically, when they pick it, it takes 7 days to grow the leaves again. So these people, they pick for 7 straight days and then start the same thing over again. And they work 7 days a week, and they're done about 11 in the morning. So working their 8 hours. I didn't want to bring up it was all women, but it was all women, and a lot of them were from India. Okay, again, this was Sri Lanka, and this is the grading of the tea. Our guide, we went and saw a lot of Buddhist temples and the like. This first one is part Buddhist painting and stuff in it, but it's also one of the kings, and we are in the garden right there. And where the palace is at the top of that rock, okay? They said it was 1,300 steps. I don't really believe it. I know Dave doesn't believe it. But anyway, it was about 95 degrees with 95% humidity. But anyway, this is the lower gardens. And then this was used to be a large statue that was there. And then this is our way, working our way up. Yeah, it was a wonderful day. Anyway, this is halfway up, and you can't see it because they don't allow us to take pictures, but there are these pictures of Buddha and other things there, so I know you really want to see it. But that's where that was. Then we got to the top, and that's where they had, this was a bathing pool, they had the throne, they had, and this whole top was basically a palace for the king. This was in the 3 centuries before Christ. Okay, the next place we went, they call it the 5 caves. I'm not going to show you all of them. This is just one cave in the 2nd century before Christ of Buddhism, another one. And then we went to a Buddhist temple. This is the Temple of the Tooth. Has a tooth from Buddha, and Buddha was born on a full moon, and the next day was going to be a full moon. So we were trying to get there because people were already lining up for this huge celebration the next night. So anyway, this is the outside of it. Inside, because this is a special temple, because it has a tooth from Buddha. They had all these Buddhas that came from all around the world, and our guide told us where they were all from. But anyway, there's lots of different statues of Buddha. The Indian vacation, this is where I wanted to go. This is the Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal was amazing. This is the main entrance to the Taj Mahal. And this is the Taj Mahal. And I will say this, if you want to see it, it may not be around. The pollution is so bad in India. They are, what you see there, they're non-stop trying to clean it. But it is amazing. That's the only thing I can say. And you can see the reflection. This, the last day, this is Gandhi's tomb, which was very basic. Anyway, and that's the vacation part. India. This gives you a map of India. And I think the best way to describe it, it's got 50 states approximately, or lots of states. And the way I'll word it is, as you think of the states, think of them as Indian nations. The Cherokee, the Apache, the Cheyenne, all with their different languages, all with their different customs. And that's what you see in India. And none of them communicate very well with one another. So they have a hard time getting change. Nor do they want to change, some of them. So as you hear us talk about the tribes, I really think the Indian nations in the United States is a good analogy to it. India, this is Bruckner's version, to me is chaos. There are so many people and so many cars, and they want to be industrialized, that they're doing it at any cost, pollution and everything else. So on the road you'll see tractors. Basically they wind through, and in the front, as they come to a red light, there's probably 30 motorcycles, and when the light changes, it's on your mark, get set, go. Okay? You see everything, people riding down. You're going to see other vehicles. I will say this, I was always glad when I was in a taxi with Leah, because she was always in the back praying aloud, as loud as she could. And I viewed that I might survive the trip, okay? Is that true?
It's true.
Yeah. It's not,
I call them religious experiences.
There's no line.
Prayer is required.
Okay, this is the video. This is to give you, now look, and this is a small sample. This is in Delhi.
Yes. Hello.
That's a 2-lane highway. This is the Muslim section of Delhi, and the average space that they live in there is 10 meters by 10 meters. And by the way, that's a 2-lane highway. And that gives you a perspective of bodies, and we were in rickshaws in this case. That's, you can stop it. I just wanted to give you that perspective. Population of India is 1.25 million people, which is billion people, which is about half the size of the United States. 500 million of them make about, or the average wage is about 17,000 rupees, which is about $1 a day for when they work, which is $260 a year. The main religions, 80% Hindu, 12% Islamic, meaning Muslim, the variations, 2.5% Christian, 0.5% Buddhism.
So the next piece, Dave's gift to us, is the welcome and the hospitality of the Indian people.
How do I get it to go? Okay. Hospitality.
Left or right?
Well, I wasn't touching anything today. Hit it? Yes. This is just the greeting we got when we'd come to these tribal villages. There was always a parade. This was headed to the meeting place that we would have. And this was just part of their dance that they would do for us. So, this is one of the dances at a school, or one of the villages we were at, another dance that all the women and children would do, or the girls mainly. This one was one of the villages that we thought were the most successful because they had done quite a few different crops. This village is one that they keep telling me I was at. There was one day I was sick. This was the village we were at that I wasn't at because everybody come home with the marigold lei that the villagers had made for them. So this is the first time I get to see this one. Most time when they were singing, it was about harvest or planting a crop or whatever. Not all the videos you can hear. So okay. This is our translator.
You all, as a guest, most welcome in our small village. We are so happy to welcome you as a guest. Though as a people of, tribal community we do not have anything to offer you except this beautiful flower, which we have grown from our land. So by making the sort of garland, we welcome you by offering this beautiful flower. So please accept this, and once again we welcome you all in our land. So this,
like Jim said, a lot of different languages. Every village we went to had a different language, so the interpreter would really have to think about it, and hopefully we got it interpreted. We didn't know. This was another dance at one of the community centers we were in at the village. See, everybody else sat on the floor out there watching, but we got the girls dancing and we got chairs.
They always had chairs for us Westerners, always. That was part of the hospitality.
This here was at a girls' orphanage, and they were singing to us. These were girls saved from trafficking, or families just couldn't take care of them. And there was something like 60, 70 girls from the age 2 on up. And that's their protector dog. He did protect them. They did ask us to sing a song, and it's a good thing it's not there. We weren't as good as them, so.
So the whole purpose of this trip was to go and see projects that you and we have been contributing to in the past 10 years for FRB. So all the tribal visits we do, we are out to see FRB projects. Some of them our money has gone directly to. So Kent and Duane are going to speak to the farming processes and the FRB projects that we visited.
I don't even know what the first slide is, so let's see. Oh, this is your part. There we go.
These are water catchment, or vases that they would hand pump the water like in a city and catch the water needs and they carry it to where they use the water. So it's this one, the arrow. Oh, there we go. This is a well where the village where the Dave just talked about the orphanage. So the top is the screen where you see the rope there. A girl was pulling a bucket up, standing on that grate with the opening, and she was probably 10-ish. So there's the bucket, and you dip way down. These wells are hand dug. They're probably 10-foot diameter, anywhere from 40 to 60 feet deep. So that's where they got their water from, dipping the bucket into there. Another well on the left. There's 2 pictures, actually 3, excuse me. The one on the left picture is a well that's hand dug, a brick lined. And the one on the right is one of the projects that they had done to kind of revise well or make them safer so that the surface water doesn't run into the well. The one on the bottom is, Debbie, is that your picture? What was that? Oh, it's a well. You're looking down. It's like down. Yep. Yeah, you're standing on the top. And it's $4,500 to put that well in, but these wells are just open on the top. There's no rail around them, no nothing. So it's interesting how they have no codes, they have no rules or regulation things, but they're open all the way to the top. There's a hand pump well at a village or one of our farm visits, and you can see kind of behind it there's a little trough or gutter, if you will, that catches the water. They reuse their water, and then they reuse it to water vegetables on the left and the back, a garden, a larger garden. There's one of your hand pump wells on the left in the city, and filling containers up and then impacting the water away on the right. You were doing the thrash.
This is harvesting.
One of these is a video. Isn't it, Peter?
Is this? Do I press that button? There we go. This is the most primitive form of harvesting rice that we saw. The oxen are pulling a roller, which is knocking the rice off the straw, and then they will get the straw off the top of there to collect their rice. So.
Modesty.
Oh dear. So, yeah, it's a little more primitive than here. But that's the same place. Oh, goats, or no, sheep. Goats. Yeah, they move them down the highway. That's how they move them. So we had to circumvent around them to get down the road. Here's one bottom plows behind 2 oxen each. Yeah, they're about 100 years behind us, I would say, over there in agriculture. We have like 10 million people in the U.S. that are involved in agriculture, that do the farming. And there, I think I read, they got 260 million people. So 26 times more people doing their agriculture. This is the thing I fell in love with. This is a modern combine, which I would classify from the 50s here. But we were driving down the highway, and I screamed to stop so I could go out there and see this combine. And Dwayne went with me, and they're probably wondering, who the heck are these two white people out in our field? But it's pretty small. It's made over in Punjab, India, and that's close to the Pakistani border, which a lot of gunshots are being fired now, so we wouldn't have been a good idea to go to that factory.
Kent and Dwayne, how many of these did you end up counting?
50.
49 to 50.
49 or 50. The girls were all counting elephants and thought that was great, and we counted combines instead. Rice. It's a very big rice culture. It's rice everywhere. That's the staple of their diet. We got in a hotel late one night, and we were hungry, and there's a KFC right next door. So we went in there, and I thought I was going to have chicken with mashed potatoes and gravy, and they didn't have mashed potatoes and gravy. So I was pretty bummed out.
But rice.
They had rice, I know. They had rice everywhere.
How about tractor on top? Maybe they'll.
Oh, can I go backwards? Well, I thought it was brilliant. They have a little John Deere tractor on these, and that's how they powered this thing. The rear axle has a chain down on the wheel, and the PTO drives a gearbox to run the combine, and that's how they made these things. So I thought it was pretty brilliant. Pardon? Are you going to adapt that here? Probably not. What have we got there? Rice trials. Yeah, one of our stops.
Which one of you is going to speak to the rice culture? Kent, why don't you talk a little bit about rice? The problem with rice nutritionally and water
rice. White rice doesn't have a lot of nutritional
Mary
value.
is. Sorry.
Oh, Mary's going to talk about that. Okay. They just grow a lot of rice. And a lot of rice. Oh, this was this was down south.
Yeah, the more successful.
Yeah, where there's some real good FRB projects where they're moving towards organics, and then more traditional seeds, and they're trying to diversify their diet, move away from rice and more towards millets, which is a lot higher in protein, and which they need diversity in their diet to be healthier. And this was a very good farmer that was working with FRB. And he was very, very proud of his fields there. I think the average field is a quarter acre. Is that about right? Yeah, quarter acre. Here is a stationary thresher that's doing rice. Had a little tractor on the front powering it. And there's guys on top putting I guess you'd call it rice shocks in there. And, they're probably stomping it down in there. They don't have OSHA there, so it doesn't matter. They're feeding it again. They have little catch buckets that catch the rice, and then they put it in bags and hand sew them.
This is why
there's the
26
bucket.
times more people are working in Indian agriculture.
The chute there is shaken with the shoe shake of the combine. And so a lot of the rice is not making it in that pan there. Wow. Am I going?
Yes,
I'm hitting the arrow. Okay. Okay, there it's blowing the straw out the side. Any old farmers in here, it's kind of like a Sidewinder at Alice Chalmers combine from the old days. Was that sugar cane? Bananas. Oh, bananas. Oh, we went by a huge banana plantation, which we didn't. It had to be a big corporation because it was huge.
That shouldn't be there.
And that shouldn't be there?
Outside one of our hotels.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Is that where? It's back to him. Okay.
In one of our villages or tribes, that container is where they store their rice. It's what was it made out of?
Manure.
Clay and manure.
No, it was made of bamboo.
Oh, bamboo.
woven,
And then clay. And then so they contain it, and then when they need it, they open up the top and take the rice out for their needs for the winter. That sacks inside one of the houses on shelves with rice in it. That is their line of, I think that's a seed, I think, if I remember, put in a little container that keeps it, the clay and the manure combo together to keep it in there and protect it, keep it dry and stuff that they'll plant in their next crop. There's a guy just holding some rice in his hand. This was a display of the one village we went to with all the different things they're doing of the rice and the crops they grow on. It's hard to tell what there is, but they had a lot of things on tables spread probably here and there and probably on a big thing, and they were very proud of what they were doing. And that's them standing behind their table of display showing us what they're doing. Oops, went too fast. That, I think, is a wheat field with some volunteer mustard in between. And they're doing more, I'll talk about it a bit. That's a manure kind of pile that they pile it up and let it dry, and then they'll use that for their organic fertilizer. That's where they dig a little hole in the ground. They'll put some of their organic compost fertilizer in there and then plant something in there. I'm not sure what they plant there. That's one of their tools they use for farming and tilling the soil. And that's the farmer that Ken had that, not sure what, in the drum, that's where they do the organic. I think there's cow manure, urine, molasses, is it not a butter? Banana
Banana leaf.
and it's is it butter? 5 different things, concoctions that they make in it, and it makes like a slurry out of it, and then I think they cut it 10-to-1 with water, and then they spray it on the ground or crops, more on the ground I would imagine, for the organic fertilizer. So it's quite a process. Oh, cow urine, yeah. Right. But they didn't show a picture, but the one guy had a kind of little hut with concrete as the floor. So the livestock, he had one in there, was tied up. So he'd feed it there, and he'd collect all the manure, the urine would go down into a gutter and catch it in a bucket. So it's quite a process. That's one of, what's on the right? That's got to be the rice field.
It's the nursery stuff. So this is the rice and then the nursery stock.
Okay. And there we were standing there, and that's rice field right kind of behind us there. It was being flooded. There's Kent and I and one of the farmers there. And that's Kent's new buddy. He ditched me.
I just thought he was really cool looking, so I wanted a picture with him. So that's why we did it.
One of the things that we learned that they are doing is they're going more to vegetables. It's not a big scale, but they're going more to vegetables. And I'm sure Mary will talk about some of that for their diet, but we saw that in farms. We saw things like green peas. They gave some of the pods. They do grow some onions. They don't get very big. What else we saw? The mustard, potatoes, they said. Cauliflower. We didn't see any cauliflower in the fields. Maybe driving down we did on a trip, but they did see cauliflower in their roadside stands in town, which didn't look like bad cauliflower. They weren't big heads, but it didn't look bad.
I snuck this one in. This was a girl that was a guide to us in the north, and Leah and I both fell in love with her because she had a really bubbly personality and reminded us of our youngest daughter, Emily. And so we thought
she looks just like her, right?
And so we decided we wanted to adopt her. But she's 25 years old. She's a little old, but we fell in love with her. And there's Leah with some village children. So the kids were wonderful over there.
Oops, we're done. Oops, I went the wrong way.
So these years we have been doing FRB. Our focus has continually been about food and feeding hungry people and helping hungry people to feed themselves in a sustainable way. But one of the things that we learned, and it's kind of a duh once you think about it, but one of the things we learned firsthand is by helping people to create sustainable farming practices, it's also sustaining families. Because if a family cannot feed their children, they could sell their children to someone, or mom and dad could go off to the city to try to earn money, and that means the children are left alone as well. So, Mary's going to speak to the connection between sustainable farming and sustainable families.
So this is one of the first places we went to where we were greeted by the children. We went to a school. And I put this in here because it shows this is one of the FRB projects. We're not far from here. And this was the village that was doing it. And because they had the school and the project, the children were able to go to school and actually learn. They were fed a meal there. Their noon meal was at the school. Some of them did go home for school for lunches, but they actually were fed enough food so they could learn. This is that project that we walked out to, and partly this picture is because of the canopy. So at places where we went had these incredible artistic fabrics and beautiful colors. You can see that we were given places of honor because we were sitting in the chairs. And this is these are the farmers that were there. Now, what was interesting when they talked about, well, we are the farmers. So the men got up first, and then the women were asked to come up later. And what we found out about after we had done this a bit, because we had seen all these men were the farmers, it wasn't the men that did the farming. It was the women. So the women would take their small children out in the fields and work the fields, plant the rice, do the process. I'm not quite sure what the male role was because we weren't really told, but I think they probably did the negotiating, they did the talking. One of the places we went to, the women didn't talk, and they wouldn't talk. One of the tribal settings we were at. And one of us finally said, well, if the women are the farmers, why aren't they talking? Well, the women can't talk in front of their brother-in-law. So the women didn't speak. When we went with the women, this is just another one of the kids' pictures. You can see the different sizes. And Leah's there in the back. The one little boy in the front with a pink shirt, I suspect he had some sort of chromosomal deformity. You couldn't quite tell. But the children that had learning difficulties or had issues, they were much smaller. They were much bonier, very much loved by parents because they were there and they were held. But you can just see the difference in the stature between kids. Clearly, nutrition is a difficult thing. This got put in because I love it. This is about traffic. The sign says accident-prone zone, and if you look over in the corner, it's a bull cart. I had to put it in because I love the picture. It has nothing to do with sustainable farming, other than it's a farm truck going somewhere. This is one of the guys. He had taken his cow out to the pasture. He was coming back with the cow, and there's Salome. Salome was our guide at this very successful FRB project where they were showing us the different things. I'm going to back up to this one because I just remembered. Here, this was our first visit out to a site, and we're kind of not sure what we can eat, what we can drink, what we can touch. And they first offered us this hot cup of slurry. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like slurry, and it was hot. And we kind of looked at each other, and I said, well, it's hot. It must be okay. It's been hot once. It was a mixture of millet and rice and lentils all boiled down to make a milk. There wasn't milk in there. I don't know whether they had coconut milk in it, but it really tasted good. It was a drink they made only for celebrations. I suspect that it was probably fairly nutritional. Not quite sure what all was in it, but it was only once in a while. It was also at this place with these children that we got a bowl of stuff. And again, you look at it, and I stuck my finger in it, said, well, it's been hot. It was sprouted lentils, sprouted millet, sprouted beans, peas, some rice, and it sprouted and then cooked into this meal that they served us all, and then they served everybody else that was there. This was a meal that they served twice a month. This was cooked up and served to everybody. So you probably had some really good nutrition in this, but you only got it twice a month. That's, where these projects that we're doing through FRB that we're sponsoring, it's hopefully they can have that nutrition more than twice a month.
By the way, it was really, really good.
It was really good.
Oh, yeah. We
Yeah,
had huge piles, and the villagers got a wee bit.
Did we have a spoon there? No, we had fingers. You only eat with this hand. You sit on this one. You don't touch anything with your left hand. This is an example. This was actually in my lap. So we were at a place, we went to this farming, and then some people in the group decided they needed to go to the bathroom. Well, there was no bathroom anywhere. And so they were carted away to a house, and some of us stayed at this field, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And some of us got a little nervous that we were waiting. They got treated to tea and cookies or whatever. But when I have an example here, this was in my lamp, they gave us this little bowl of stuff that we ate, and then they gave us a rose, coxcomb, and a lemon, and those were things that they grew. Now, the rose and the coxcomb were really for ornamental. They were used to sell for celebrations, for making, we saw ropes of the coxcomb that were for leis, that for special things. And these were the women in that group. These were the farmers. These were the ones that couldn't speak very much, but at least they were there listening. My favorite person is the first one here because she was so intent on hearing everything that was said, what was being offered, what could be done, how it could be done differently. And the interpreter told us that she was probably the most successful farmer in that group. She had 5 acres, and she was doing the best job of raising varieties. Now we talk about the rice, that the white rice, and the white rice was everywhere. We know that it doesn't have a lot of nutritional value, but they don't eat brown things because brown is bad. That is tradition. And so getting them to eat lentils, getting them to eat millet, beans, that was a really big movement. So they have better nutrition, but brown is bad, which seems an oxymoron to me. But you saw that. I think you'll talk about that later, about the difference in skin color. This is another gourd. Now, this is a really ugly gourd, but they cut it up in pieces and made chips out of it. So while we were waiting for the bathroom people to come back, we got this bowl of chips. And it's like, I thought, well, it's been fried. Well, it was this gourd cut in pieces, cut in little thin pieces, and then baked. And it was really quite delightful. I have no idea the nutrition, but it was a chip. I hadn't had a chip. I'd had curry and rice. And then this is another picture of the goat. I think we probably saw 100 goats coming down this road, and this guy, they waved. They saw white people, they waved, they smiled. They were so excited to see us. Again, what you see here is an example of sustainable farming. They milk the goats. I don't know if they ate them or not, depending on what religion they are, but they milked them, and so they had milk goat, and they made cheese out of it. And we did have in places the curd. They didn't make a real like cheese that we know, but it was a curd cheese. And so you would have that in some of the soups. In the very middle, and Jill will have another picture, but this was at one of the more successful places. And if you can see the little woman in the back, very gray-haired, different jewelry, but she was also very tattooed. And so you see the difference, you saw the difference in the generations between this older woman with her multitude of tattoos, nose jewelry, ear jewelry, to the younger woman in front of her without any of that. Didn't ask what the cultural differences were. I didn't want to be impolite, but you saw this difference.
And wasn't this the village that had been Christianized?
Yes, this one had been Christianized. The building right behind him was a church. And so it had been Christianized. Probably don't allow tattoos with Christians.
Yeah.
Was it Baptist? Oh,
and these
okay.
were the women, which this really was troubling, these were the women that were not allowed to speak. And so in my own self, I wondered, is that the conservative Christianity that had been brought to them, or was that their tribalism, and we really never got a good answer?
Same village, the woman that couldn't speak to us out in the group could speak to us in here. And so this is where they stored their rice and their barley and their millet, and they were very proud of their crop. They were very, very proud. On the far side is their bed. It's just a wooden slab. This was their living room, bedroom. More villagers. Now, if you watch the little one in front, there's a little boy here in front. This is another village talking to us about sustainable farming. This was for a part where we kind of wondered how they were doing it, questioning how they were doing it. It didn't seem quite as effective in doing a variety of crops, but I fell in love with this little boy. So I got lots of pictures of him, and he was eating these little crackers, and the chicken came to share. Now, I don't know if they'll share the chicken later on, but the little boy and the chicken were there. This was my other favorite picture. You put your haystack in a tree so the animals don't eat it. Okay? Seemed ingenious to me. The other thing I loved about the villages is in their little way they had art. And I don't know that they meant to have art on purpose there, but that's a wall, a cement wall, and somebody had taken their fingers and then made a design, and the bucket happened to be there, and then the roof line happened to be there, so it made a cool picture. This is walking out to a field. You can see how dry it is. You can see how the trees some have leaves, some do not. We're walking out to a well, and it was a walk to the well. This is how you keep your chickens safe. This is at a big dam, and this picture is in here because Salome was our guide initially, and I was amazed at how she could wear that garment and it never came off. I struggled with one scarf, and this was yards of material, and it just stayed wrapped around her. I don't have a clue. Sustainable farming, this is one of the more successful places. These are all the different crops they grew. It was the lentils, the beans, the millets, different varieties. I do think the tribal people here looked healthier. On the far end is actually herbal medicines that they have remembered from the forest. Here's my little lady that I showed you before. My picture is a little bit out of order. But you see the two older ladies there with their jewelry and their age. Another successful farmer, she was the one that pumped the water out to the gardens, and the guinea hen on the roof. Everybody should have a guinea hen on the roof. But you see the art that's also in these tribal places.
So there's so many differences between what we see and what we hear and what we experience and India. But a huge piece of it is the poverty, and a huge piece of it is how many things happen on the street that we would never imagine would happen on the street.
Yeah, poverty. One thing I brought back from this trip, and I read it on the internet today, is poverty is a moral issue. And that's something that is in my mind since this trip. There are ways to take care of all these people, but it's just not being done. In India, there's 1.2 billion people. 276 million of them live below the poverty level in India, which is $1.25 a day. The poverty level in the United States is $29 a day. So a lot of people live below that level. This picture was taken from our van. We couldn't get our driver to stop at the slum areas. So some of these pictures were on the freeway. You see a motorcycle helmet in the front, but those are some of the shanties along the river, mostly in the cities where we were, because they needed to be close to water access. And you can see there as we're driving along, we're all standing up in the van as it's going down the road trying to take photos, but we couldn't get drivers to stop in these places. But we saw a lot of poverty. They say that when we went, they told us that a third of the population in India live an average life. The next third are what we would consider at poverty level. On the last third, we had no idea until you get there and see it. And that is oh so true. Dogs everywhere, and Debbie will probably talk on this too, but you couldn't go anywhere without seeing dogs. And they weren't vicious dogs, they were just dogs, mangy looking dogs. This one found a garbage pile to lay in, and garbage piles weren't hard to find because there are no garbage cans. This was also taken at the same dam. From up above, I zoomed in, and it looks kind of like a picnic. Everyone's playing in the water, having a good time. You see some what look like towels laying there. But actually, when you zoom in, it was bath time. That's where these people bathe in the river, and the towels were the laundry. And as you're going through the big cities where they have the laundry services that come pick up your laundry, they take it to the river. And you drive across the bridge, and you look down, and all of the riverbank is bright Indian colors of all the fabrics laying out to dry. This man, right beside him, and I was in the car again, is a city pump. And they have hand pumps. They turn the water on for several hours a day. And if you do not have a home with running water or a home, or you live on the street or under the bridge, that's where you take your bath. And he had done his laundry, it was hanging to dry, and was bathing himself. And driving down the street, you would see that over and over and over. Let me see I had some notes here. There's so many people below poverty level, but the people just above poverty level also live a very fragile life because of lack of nutrition, lack of housing, sanitation is a big problem. So it's not just those millions below the poverty level. It's, I would say, the next level up also are struggling. We were right across the street in a hotel that had electricity, running water. Toilets. Not squatters, real toilets. And you look out the front door, and this is the well directly across the street, and that man is pumping water. This is, Dwayne showed a picture. This is the same man. He had just been at our well, and we watched him fill up his buckets, and he was carrying it away. I don't know if he had a street stand that he was needing water for, or if he was taking it to a home or wherever he was staying. Water was a big issue. Just as we thought water was a big issue for us here, water in India is huge. They're in a 10-year drought right now. And at one of the villages that we were at, those things bobbing in the water in front are ducks. They are fishing. And this woman was doing her laundry. When we went into Agra, there was a sign there, and it was really warm, and I was hot, and it's very humid, but there was no way we were trusting pure and safe drinking water. Even though it was at a tourist spot, there was no way. I think this was outside of Gandhi's tomb. It might have been safe. You never knew what you were going to see on the street. Sometimes you run into Beauty and the Beast. This was in front of our hotel one night. We came back late. We had been gone all day. It was like a 3.5-hour ride to the village and back. And we came back to our hotel, and it was all decorated. Somebody was having a princess birthday party. And somebody might have gone in and got a princess cupcake. I'm not sure. We were all invited. And that was the one thing about the Indians is no matter where we went, we were invited to participate. And we were invited to have whatever they had to share with us. And it was really kind of scary at first because you'd be walking down the street and people would say, "Selfie with you?" And they wanted to take a picture of you. Well, here we don't have that. But there, we had our pictures taken hundreds and hundreds of times with strangers, and especially Debbie. If we were, Debbie's blonde hair was very attractive to everyone. And she was called Lemon Hair Lady at one of the tribal villages, and so that name kind of stuck, poor Debbie. But we were kind of an attraction there, which was sad and scary. But walking down the streets, you never knew what you were going to see, but you will notice that this person is walking in the street. The sidewalks were pretty dirty. Sidewalks were urinals and whatever else. You couldn't drive a half a block without seeing someone urinating on a wall or sitting on the sidewalk with their children, wondering where their next meal was going to come from. This was the woman, I guess, if you have a garden and you just take out your blanket, lay it on the street, and you can sell your extra vegetables. This man was roasting peanuts, and they smelled really, really good. I was tempted, but we didn't. They call them ground nuts there. They have the homeless, and they do sleep a lot during the day, just like our homeless do. We did not witness any alcohol problems. I don't think that there's much of that going on. No drugs in India. If you are caught with drugs, you are sent to prison for 80 years of hard work. If you have chickens and you're taking them to market, this was another place we drove by, and we were in one of those tuk-tuk rides, and that smelled really, really good. Going down the street, they were harvesting sugarcane. And I guess it's better to put it all on one load instead of make two. Goats coming at us down the street. At first we were totally shocked, and as it happened most days, it became second nature. The women carrying their wares on their head, and they had quite a walk. It was a ways to town. Cows are sacred, and it's kind of ironic that our Grow project is cows. But this was common. We would see cows daily on the freeway, on the highway, wherever. And if they wanted to lay down, they did. And the cars went around them. We saw camels outside the Taj Mahal. And this is in Old Delhi, the last day we were there. And they told us that the street sweepers were on strike. Now, street sweepers are pretty low in the caste system, and they sweep by hand with homemade brooms. The caste system, you've probably heard of that in India, it's illegal to use it to discriminate against you, but whatever caste you're born into is put on your birth certificate. It stays with you for life. It's unchangeable. And there are estimated to be 1,100 different castes, different levels, and it's based on the occupation of your parents. 16% of the population, they estimate, is the Dalit caste, which are called the untouchables. And those would be the beggars on the streets. They have no other choice. They're not going to get a job or be hired. My daughter-in-law is training to be a doctor, and she was at OHSU following a cardiologist who happens to be Indian. And she went to India to get married to another cardiologist who works at OHSU. But he is in a caste one level lower than hers, and her family still hasn't accepted him. It's very sad, but it's a very real thing. If you are Indian, you are part of the caste system. And every time we asked about it, the response was, it's illegal. It's illegal. But it was very vivid. It was very vivid. We did find out from one of our guides that if you are a barber, and we figured that Tracy at Visions just has way too much overhead. If you're a barber there, you have a chair on the street with a mirror hanging on the wall and a pair of scissors and a comb. But you're below the Dalits, or above the Dalits because you have a source of income, but you are still very low on the caste system because you touch human waste, which would be hair. So you're kind of set where you're going to be in life, which is, you can move up, you can better yourself, but you can't get out of the caste that you're born into. And this picture, I don't know how I got it. I got it out of the van, but you only see two people in this picture. You could not drive down the street and only see two people. I don't know. I took it because I really wanted to stop at one of these shops and buy a stainless steel pot. But that was rare to see a store without people standing in front of it. That's the night train. Debbie and Dwayne were in their bunks getting ready to go to sleep. Night train. That was a fun experience. On our trip, we had a flat tire on the way to Agra after Leah and Kent left us. We're on a toll freeway that looks like I-5, but a whole lot less traffic. And we get a flat tire in our van. And instead of looking down and saying, oh, we got a flat tire, we're going to be late, we went out and we were looking at the countryside right by the freeway. It was very safe there. There wasn't much traffic. And this woman was walking with a bowl on her head, and we were watching her, and this is her later. They take manure, and they make it into these pizza-type patties. And they had it on the slope from the freeway going down, laying there baking in the sun to dry. And they use it for fertilizer, and I believe they also use it for firewood, for fuel. But we were watching her, and she was Muslim. And when she got up there to load the manure in, she had taken off her veil. And her husband was at the house, which was just down the road a little ways. And he yelled at her loud enough that we heard it up on top. And we thought, oh boy. So she looked up and saw these guys were watching. So she had to cover up her face. Well, she covered up her face and took her load and walked on. And we're standing there, and all of a sudden her husband comes marching towards us. And we thought, oh boy, they're in trouble now. These guys are in trouble for gawking at his wife. So we kind of moved closer to the van. Well, the guy came up, stepped over the guardrail, stuck out his hand, shook his hand, and was talking farming with these guys. Well, and this is the manure piles. We moved in closer because he looked like George Clooney of India, is what we called him. He was a very handsome man. So that was one of the benefits of getting the flat tire, is getting to talk to this guy and watching what his wife was doing. But he explained some things to the guys. That was the only car trouble we had on the trip, and we went lots of miles in cars. This is Dhruba. I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago we hosted Dhruba from India, and she spoke here at church one day. Well, we had promised her that if we ever went to India, we would look her up. And all I knew was her name was Dhruba and the name of the project she worked on. So we emailed FRB, and within 24 hours they had gotten in touch with her. She now works for different organizations, but I think there was 8 different email trackings. And they found her, and she flew to Calcutta and met us one evening for a couple hours. So we got to visit with Druma, and that was pretty special. I was really looking forward to that. She's wonderful, and she remembered the lady in your church that has sheep and lambs, and I ate strawberries with her. What's her name? Nora. It's Nora. A couple of the children. I'm attracted to kids. I used to teach first grade. I love kids, and I was attracted to kids. So I took some pictures, lots of pictures of kids, but 43% of the children in India under the age of 5 are malnourished, compared to 1% in the United States. 43%. There's a big study going right now that the first 1,000 days of a child's life from conception on are the most important. If they don't get full nutrition during that first 1,000 days, they never develop their full potential in height or intelligence. And we could really see that in the children that we saw. But they were beautiful children. And this is the little boy at lunchtime that has I think that's what Mary was talking about, the bean mixture. It was lunchtime at the village, so all the kids were eating their banana leaves with their beans. School children, I was supposed to be listening to farmers, but the school children were walking by after school, and I was way too distracted to listen to farmers at that point. But the average child in India goes to school 4.5 years, compared to in the United States, 14.5 years. These kids were at the first school that we went to. And here, you wouldn't take photos of kids at school without asking permission of the teacher, the principal, whoever. But we figured once they started taking pictures of us, it was probably safe to take pictures of them too. No shoes, no running water, cell phones. And they loved to see their pictures on cell phones if they didn't have their own. So we would take pictures of them and then show them what they looked like. These little boys were at the same place I was getting distracted watching school children, and you'll see sheep in the background, and right behind them is a pig. You just kind of got used to farm animals being around. And these are the little olds at that same very successful visit. And I don't know what the jewelry means. It probably was something they got when they got married. But they wanted to stand up when I asked to take their photo. And I said, no, please stay where you're at.
And this was all sign language.
No.
They did not speak English.
But I love their feet. I love the feet. This was another village where we got spritzed with water. Kind of like when the pastor takes baptismal water and spritzes it on the kids once in a while. Same kind of a thing, but it was with the leaves. And then marigold petals. Children at the orphanage. These were 3 of the youngest. And at this village, there was definitely the insiders and the outsiders. And we were inside this concrete building watching the farmers, listening to their stories, and there were obviously those that weren't invited in, and they were checking us out. Okay, I have a quote from Anthony Bourdain that I love, and it meant a lot to me before I went on the trip, but after the trip, it really hits home. And if you don't know Anthony Bourdain, he's a chef, kind of does travel shows, travels and eats all over the world, crazy things. But Anthony Bourdain says, travel isn't always pretty. It isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it breaks your heart. This was a beggar on the street with her baby, and she'd gone to the back window, and our pastor blessed her, blessed the baby. And then she moved up to the front, and that's Jim sitting there, and the window was down, and the baby was reaching in, grabbing Jim. We were told over and over, you can't give the money, you can't support this, because the money is probably not going to the baby or to her, it's going to whoever owns her. Sometimes it breaks your heart, but it changes you. And that's okay. Let's see where I'm at. The journey changes you, it should change you. It leaves marks on your memory, on your consciousness, on your heart, and on your body. You take something with you, and hopefully you leave something good behind. And this is Pastor Leah at the orphanage. They asked her to pray with the children, and you can't really see it in this picture. The sun is not good, but every one of those children is praying. They have their hands folded and their heads bowed, and she did a wonderful blessing with them. And that is us at Queen Victoria's memorial.
So Debbie's going to round it out. It's pretty clear that it is a country of surprises and contradictions, but you're going to drive it home.
Well, yes. What I did was I put mine in categories. So what you're going to see is first things that OSHA would never approve in the United States. And then it goes into some housing situations. You're going to see some that you've already seen, but none of us really knew what the other person was doing. So let's give it a whirl. We had some bamboo scaffolding. I'm guessing that wouldn't go here. I don't know if you can see this very well, but it's electrical wires going everywhere. Yeah. Across from our very nice hotel is on one side a slum, and the other side is a Toyota with a bunch of flowers and a big house sitting to the left. There were no codes as far as who could build anywhere. This is another just picture of slums as people live on the streets, right off the street. These are villages, houses in villages with, once again, whatever you need as a tool is on your roof. There are apartments, and there are high-rises. And this one on the right, my right, your left, I'm guessing, is a deli, and there were just all kinds of high-rises going in. Our hotels, we did not live in the slums. These were 3 of the nicer ones that we were in. The dogs on your right, like Jill said, they really weren't very mean, but in the United States, we give the animals rabies shots, and over there, if you get bit, you get a rabies shot. So we didn't. Check it out. We have laundry. This is how they do their laundry, washing in the water, and then you dry them. And in contrast to that, at our hotels one night, all of us got kind of tired of washing our clothes in the sink, and had them sent out to the hotel's laundry, and they came back folded exquisitely, tags on each piece of clothing with the room number on it, and a piece of paper folded in between everything. It was ironed, immaculate. We traveled. Our transportation was vans. Airports, we had 12 different flights, the longest being 15 hours and 15 minutes or so. The shortest about 50 minutes. We were in trains. We had 2 night trains, which was an uncomfortable situation, I might say. We had heard that, you could end up in the morning with somebody sitting in your little berth, and thank goodness that did not happen. On the top left there, Leah and I are hanging onto our bags very closely because we knew something bad was going to happen. Dwayne is protecting us. And then these guys are down there just on the bottom laughing, like, hey, what are you guys worried about? They were all together. We were each by ourselves. People traveled in, out, and above vehicles. These were fun little tuk-tuks. Like Kent said, it's a little aged. Those were our taxis. Again, I think Jim showed this, but there were motorcycles everywhere. And people carried things in all different manners. This was one of our kind of favorite little transportations. I'm not sure the person having to bike us was as fond of it as we were, but it sure was fun. We saw garbage, and this was a beach. We were very protected. People didn't really want to show us all the bad stuff, but it's one of the longest beaches in the world, 8 miles, and you didn't take your shoes off. We were told if we stepped in the water, you'd have to take a shower immediately. Oh, I think I just skipped. Just garbage. You can see down below this one. We're in probably our nicest hotel. And right across the street below, there's a cow in the middle of that garbage, just meandering around. Dogs, I think Jill had that picture. And, with the garbage and below, there's just cows and people and everybody sitting around. So there was quite the contrast of, here are the streets. And then you would see, they did have a garbage can there and people were trying, I guess. We had different kinds of village experiences. These are kind of the foods. This was one of the meals that we
yummy
had.
Stuff.
This was the stuff that everybody really did like, but you ate it with your fingers and hoped that you would not get sick. This was in a restaurant. This was kind of a typical meal. This was along the sides of the streets. Some were very beautifully presented, and then you can see the one on the right is just somebody who's there. And we had a very nice meal, again, up in that hotel that was right across from the garbage with the cow in the middle. Yeah, we had a variety of... Now, I just want to say that Mary made it sound like when we went to the bathroom that was a really great experience, and it wasn't as much fun as she thought it was. So on your...
They're the same as you.
Are they the same?
They're the same as you.
Oh, well, you could have shown me that a long time ago.
That's okay.
The left was the train, and you can't really visualize what you're stepping in these pictures because you are in about a half an inch of something. And when we did go to the restroom in the train, what we didn't realize was it was going directly into the tracks. So they advised you not to go to the restroom when you were stopped at a station, and we really didn't figure that out for a little while. Why? The others are typical bathroom situations. Now, the bucket isn't a very nice bathroom. We never really figured out what the cause for that was, except Mary did her laundry in it. I don't know. Some of us didn't want to put anything in it. The toilet paper in the one is, the only reason you see toilet paper is, I think, somebody brought it in with them and didn't know what else to do with it. There's not toilet paper ever given to you unless you're in a hotel that's nicer. This was our most unique. We had no idea what to do here. If you were desperate, you found... Thank you again for praying for us, but we were... because this was the women's, yeah. The restroom situation would not have been good on a bad stomach. Then at the end here, I just threw in some pictures that you do not see in the United States. This is a leprosy colony. And actually, leprosy has a very high percentage of people in India.
It is still the leprosy capital of the world.
Yes. Airports were very nice, but I don't always see a prayer room and then a smoking room offered, so that was unique. This was for Tracy. This was the picture of somebody, we saw it often, either shaving people or doing their hair on the side of the streets. And last but not least, you can't go anywhere without going to a Starbucks. There we go. And that's it for me.